This is Defenders TV Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 4. The whole world is watching.
If you had the chance to take the serum, would you do it?
Hells yeah.
You wouldn't be worried about how it might change you?
I mean, power just makes a person more of themselves, right? Karli Morgenthau, Steve Rogers.
And me?
You already have 3 medals of honor. You consistently make the right decisions in the heat of battle.
Yep. 3 badges of excellence to make sure I never forget the worst day of my life. We both know that the things that we had to do in Afghanistan to be awarded those medals felt a long way from being right. Being capped is the first time I've had the chance to do something that actually feels right.
But God, imagine how many lives we could have saved that day if we had that, sir.
I hear a lot of people saying the blues, but I'm gonna tell you what the blues is. When you ain't got no money, you got the blues.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. It's Defenders TV Podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Episode 4. The whole world is watching. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Oh, Captain, not my Captain. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this head-smashing, globe-trotting trio, I'm Chris.
Ooh, spoilers.
Well, to be fair.
Absolutely. Yes, we will once again be talking spoiler-filled in our discussion for Falcon the Winter Soldier Episode 4. If you haven't watched the episode, go watch it. Pretty big episode. You definitely need to watch this one before listening to the podcast. But thanks once again for joining us for our discussions of Falcon the Winter Soldier. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, make sure you do so over on our website at tvpodcastindustries.com. If you subscribe to the main feed, you get our coverage of Falcon the Winter Soldier, Invincible, and Pennyworth, which we're doing every week at the moment. Our last episode of Pennyworth airs tomorrow, the 11th of April. So that's the last of the 3 episodes per week that we've been doing. So you can get all of those over on tvpodcastindustries.com.
Yeah, it's been a busy spring. Spring has sprung, shall we say, on the podcast world.
It certainly has. And we've only been able to do it with the support of our wonderful listeners who've been supporting us monthly over on Patreon. You can go over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, support us over there. We've also been getting some additional support for my coffee addiction from buymeacoffee.com/TVPI, where you could buy me a coffee to keep me up doing my editing and recording the podcasts as well. It's been great fun. Thanks so much to everybody that's been buying coffees for me over there. I was up at 7 o'clock this morning doing the editing on our Invincible podcast, Chris. So I needed the coffee today.
It's great. I love this on so many levels. At some point, it's going to be, right, buymeacoffee.com, buyjohnawine.com.
Actually, you need to buy that domain, John.
Buymeawine.com.
Buymeawine.com. But it's WHINE.
Oh, don't buy John a wine.
No, don't do that. Why would you think that, Chris? I'm saying I'm whiny.
I said nothing.
Okay,
Yeah.
we need to buy chrisanenergydrink.com is what we need, I think.
Oh, no, I don't do those anymore.
And buy chrissinginglessons.com.
There you go. Buy chrisatune.com.
Oh, I like it.
Oh, God. You mean like a lozenge that you can use for your sore throat?
Kind of.
Oh, that's a very European joke there, John.
Tunes. Help you breathe more easily.
Yes, but if you have some strange predication to listening to me sing, you just need to let our illustrious producer know by sending feedback to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com and go, Derek, I want more Chris singing. Because I don't know why you would do that stuff, but if you do, yes, sure, we will do it.
In fairness, we should probably buy all our wonderful defenders, or set up a website which is buymesomeearmuffs.com.
I like
Just for the cold?
Or noise-cancelling earphones.com.
I like it. Let's get into our discussion about this episode of Falcon the Winter Soldier. Once again, this episode was written by Derek Kolstad and and directed by the director of the entire series, Kari Skogland. Good to see them working together this time. I know I had a little bit of criticism last week about some of the clunky dialogue that was in there, calling back to Winter Soldier and Civil War. And I have to say, all props to Derek Kolstad. There's definitely a scene in here where he's done some much better writing of how you introduce previous moments from previous movies, with the discussion between the Dora Milaje and Bucky. So it wasn't Derek Kolstad's fault. He had to put in a lot of exposition last episode that just felt a bit clunky. He did it much better this episode. I want to just call that compliment out up front.
Yes. Essentially, he also did it previously on.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more seamless. I have to admit, it was a lot more seamless and tear-jerking. Let's call it that, but we get into those in our points.
Absolutely. Yeah, John, do you want to tell us what happened in this episode with your synopsis for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 4, The Whole World is Watching?
Sure. Investigations at the GRC Centre reveal that Karli Morgenthau will be at the funeral of her adoptive mother, Momma Danja. But unknown to Baron Zemo and Sam Wilson is that AO has given Bucky 8 hours until the Dora Milaje will take Zemo for the murder of their king, T'Chaka. As they head to the funeral, they are intercepted by John Walker and Lamar Hoskins. While Sam wants to speak with Karli in an attempt to understand her actions and persuade her to end her violence, an impatient Captain America intervenes with force. Zemo slips away and manages to destroy most of the super soldier serum, but is knocked out by Walker, who secretly then takes the last vial of serum. But at Zemo's apartment, AO and the Dora Milaje come for Zemo, but Walker refuses to hand him over. In the ensuing fight, Walker is beaten and humiliated by the Dora Milaje, while Zemo manages to quietly slip away and escapes his would-be captors. Later that day, Sam meets with Karli again after she had threatened his sister and nephews, where she tries to persuade him to join the Flag Smashers. Meanwhile, Walker and Hoskins engage with other Flag Smashers, where Lamar is killed accidentally by Karli. Enraged by the death of his friend, and having taken the last vial of serum, Captain America chases down and kills one of the Flag Smashers for all to see. As Captain America's shield drips with blood, a group of horrified spectators, along with Karli, watches on.
Horrified indeed.
Mm-hmm. Horrified like us all.
Yes,
really.
horrified emoji.
Absolutely. Lots to talk about this episode. Let's kick into our bullet points to discuss all of our big moments from the episode. Let's start right at the start. This opening scene where we go back to Wakanda with the Dora Milaje retraining Bucky to get rid of his programming. Nice opener.
Yeah, this was spectacular. This really was. It was seamlessly blending scenes from First Avenger to Winter Soldier to what do you call Civil War. Mm-hmm. Obviously the death of the Starks. And the agony on Sebastian Stan's face as the trigger words are called out, the fight, the fight to push back on them. It's just great.
Yeah.
I heard someone say, "Oh, there's Shuri in the background." I didn't see Shuri. I just saw the Dora Milaje.
No, simply he mentions Shuri, that's all.
Yeah.
He just mentions the fact that she helped him and got the arm and that kind of stuff in the conversation. I really like this because I love that you have this kind of relationship that Bucky has with Io set up so well in the fact that she's the one that helped cure him specifically of the work that was done by Zemo and by Hydra on him. I really like how they've set this up as a scene to show that would never work, I suppose, what Zemo tried to do and using the words again on him to try and turn him back into the Winter Soldier. That will never work again because the Dora Milaje and the Wakandans have worked so hard to take this programming out of him. I wanted to check on the timelines though, because they say that this moment happened 6 years ago.
Yeah.
In Wakanda, when Bucky is there getting his training after being saved effectively from being the Winter Soldier. The snap was 5 years long, and this is 6 months after the snap. So there's a little 6-month period after Oyo tells Bucky that he's now free. There's about a 6-month period that we haven't accounted for. I think you might have mentioned it before, Chris, that is there a question over whether he started working with the Dora Milaje as White Wolf? potentially, as this other character, White Wolf. So has he gone on missions with the Dora Milaje in some way, in the world during that 6 months? Or did they just give him a break and tell him, you hang out here in your camp and enjoy the wonderful land of Wakanda?
I think it's going to be one or the other. It's going to be, that was his 6 months of peace that he discussed previously. Or it's going to be that he did take on the mantle of White Wolf from the comic books, which is essentially the adopted son, half-brother of T'Challa. And essentially it's this character who is, in all ostensive purposes, the covert CIA version for the Wakandans.
Right.
He basically, everything is done in secrecy. The White Wolf doesn't exist really, but he does. He has the war dogs, and it does all the dirty work that Wakanda or the Dora Milaje don't do.
Right.
So he goes and I think there's a whole piece. There's a whole very interesting one of it where he went and the White Wolf assassinated the neighboring country's monarch because they were getting too close to starting a war with the Wakandans.
Right.
So it's that stuff that T'Challa could never do, would never do, the Dora Milaje would never do, but it's essentially done in the name of the monarch.
Yeah. Like, I wonder whether that would work
that.
in Falcon the Winter Soldier, having him go off and be on missions prior to this season of the show.
No.
I do kind of think that maybe he did have that relaxing period of 6 months, and then maybe at the end of this series he goes off to Wakanda to work with them. Maybe that's the way they do it. But I did love these scenes with Oya and Bucky, and as I mentioned earlier on, the writing when they're back in Riga and they have that conversation between the two of them and just kind of recounting everything that he's done, all the saving that she's done, who Zemo is, the fact that their king was murdered and they will never let Zemo loose for that. I thought there was so much power in how that was written. So again, the compliment to Derek Kolstad for that writing. Really good.
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think, doing a recap and boiling it down into literally a minute. It was really, really well done. This kind of reconditioning, or the final part of it at least, by AO. I loved Sebastian Stan as well in this. As you say, Chris, I just thought he was really, really good. I mean, he sold the pants out of this scene. The internalization that he might become the Winter Soldier again. And I think as well, the empathy that you see on Ao when she says, you're free now, you're free, I thought was just really good. I thought it was a real intimate kind of scene between two people that have sort of worked up a relationship here. And that's what was kind of nice seeing them then in Riga, kind of a bit like, he had maybe betrayed them a little, there was a little bit of resentment there from her. And I thought that was just a nice little sort of contrast there. And for me personally, I would love to see the White Wolf. I think that's where Bucky, now that he's no longer the Winter Soldier, getting the mantle of the White Wolf, and having that team up with the Dora Milaje and the Wakandans, I think would be phenomenal. I would love to see that. And I think it's a really good way of, because it's such a cool name, like the Winter Soldier, and I kind of sometimes find it hard just to call him Bucky Barnes. Even though it's a nice name, I want to be calling him the Winter Soldier because it's just so good. I mean, even just those flashbacks, you just remember how sort of emo cool he was as the Winter Soldier with his long hair. And I really think that would be awesome to have him connected with the Wakandans more permanently, because as he says himself in this episode, Sam and I aren't partners. So I guess they could be a freer relationship where they hook up maybe in the future, but that his main kind of bit is with the Wakandans as the White Wolf. I think would be awesome.
Absolutely. Effectively, he has a life debt with Wakandans. They're the ones that actually saved his life, so I can kind of see him paying that back. That'd be kind of cool. I think that's kind of enough for the opening scene here. Actually, we got a great bit of feedback that we'll be playing later on about that opening scene from Matt Burdick, so we'll return to that in our feedback. In our bullet point number 2, I just wanted to call out the impact of the bomb on the GRC office, because it's actually condensed to a news report that all of the refugees they're not refugees, but all of them are sitting listening to the news and hearing the impact of the bomb that happened. Just because it was such a big moment last episode, and we talked about how this turned Karli from a freedom fighter into a terrorist because she's effectively planted a bomb killing people. I just thought it was interesting that they've said in the news report that this actually led to stronger laws and strengthened borders of the original borders. So not only is it not accomplished exactly what Karli wanted, the ruling powers of the world have actually come together to say, we're going to be even stronger on these people, and then we're going to push it even further. But they do call out that it has brought more people to the cause of the Flag Smashers. So it's partly accomplished their goal, but I just think the in-world reaction there is interesting, that they've said it's strengthened the borders that they're trying to break down.
Yeah, I wish this had been slightly more not drawn out, tersed out, kind of like just to give a bit more on it, because you said, you're right, it's essentially just a WWRN news report, and what they're just saying is exactly as you said it, but like what I would have liked to know is, how are they doubling down on it? Like if you could have seen a bit more, and like if they had have actually shown more of the news report versus doing a voiceover of like someone on their phone, while listening to the news report. Because what I'd like to see, like if they had have, I know it sounds terrible, but a vox spot of kind of like some of the, we don't call ourselves refugees, kind of explaining why they, like a couple of people going, well, we agree with like the Flag Smashers are terrorists, or just because essentially what you're just getting now is just a news report. And the reason I say this is because you're going to have, the ramifications of the blip, the impact of it is going to be throughout this phase. It is going to be a piece that happens, like it's 6 months ago. Yeah. In world time, maybe 7 months ago, and at this point, like it's going to continue on throughout the rest of the phase 4, phase 5 of the MCU. So maybe they're saving it for later, but like what you really do want, if this is going to be like terrorists versus non-terrorists, it's going to be the driving force of a lot of the good versus bad. Throughout this, I think we just need to know a bit more. What is Joe Soap's opinion? Yeah, or
even if they had, the president of the United States coming on screen going, we don't negotiate with terrorists. A big call out of someone internationally, head of the UN, something like that, saying it on
Thunderbolt
screen.
Ross?
Maybe Thunderbolt Ross, Chris, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of, news reports like that, it's the shorthand of keeping something there. And we've seen it in things like Batman a lot. You see it in comics a lot. Yeah. But I felt that this all played out in the episode in some respects. I mean, that strengthening of the laws and the borders is kind of signaled with the strong response of John Walker coming in like a bull in a china shop. And you have that kind of conversation with ordinary people with the telephone call between Karli and Sarah. And she talks about, he's not doing any of this in my name. I don't kind of support this new Captain America. That kind of, he's not my Captain America.
He doesn't care about my people. No. I wouldn't stand behind the symbol of this America. Absolutely.
And I think you have the context, of, when Sam and Bucky are going through that GRC center and none of them will talk. And you have one of them saying, we're not refugees. We're not seeking refuge from anywhere. We're displaced people.
Exactly.
Who have had all our rights taken away from us because everyone's returned from the blip. We've suddenly lost our usefulness and have been discarded effectively. So I think those kind of elements throughout the rest of the episode kind of point and sort of circle around this news report to some extent within the episode.
They add the additional context, definitely. And that kind of brings us on to bullet point number 3, which we've called talking down Karli. Usually in a show like this, a massively violent show, in general, people punchy punch all the time. This would be taking down Karli. But in this episode, something really important is happening. We have Sam actually talking to Karli, actually talking to her and, using his conversational skills that he's used with a lot of people who have trauma from being in wars. He's had these skills in use in the past, and now he's going to use them on Karli. So let's talk about Karli a bit in this episode. We find that she has got all of the vials all stashed in a cemetery with one of the other members of the Flag Smashers, Nico, and they have this really interesting conversation. I think this is probably a good starting point for their section of the episode. But they have this really good conversation where Nico's saying, "I used to be a big fan of Captain America," and Karli's kind of so far down this trail of hatred towards the world that she can't even see anything good about Steve Rogers' Captain America. But Nico's explaining that Steve Rogers taught him that there is good in other people, there is trust in other people, but he's not the right person for this world now. Someone like Karli is the right person for this world now. She's the new Captain America in his mind, the new kind of leader that this world needs. Someone that looks like other people, someone that's experienced the bad things that actually can go on in this world. I thought that was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I thought this was just really nicely done, because I think this episode's it is actually really complex in terms of, talking about, good or evil, the grey point in between, things being black and white in terms of that polarization of views. And this, this whole thing, this idea coming from the conversation that, Steve was a hero of his time, born, during World War II, that dichotomy of the Nazis and the Allies, and the good and evil.
Yeah.
And that there's this element where heroes actually, are messy. They're not perfect. Mm-hmm. Even though Steve tried to be in that sense, or very principled, maybe not perfect, he still had to do things that were messy in some way. So he himself wasn't, I don't think, black and white, good and that personification. He tried to uphold those and was the best at doing that, I think. And I like the idea that, from this conversation, it's this idea that heroes need to be, I guess, messy is the word I would use. That, sometimes they do things that are questionable, but for a greater purpose. And this idea of being in the grey zone. But that makes it difficult to associate them with being a hero then. And I think that's a really interesting kind of thing that kind of comes out of this conversation between Karli and Nico as to what for them is a superhero. Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting that Marvel kind of is looking at that now in the TV shows. Mm-hmm. Because, Marvel Comics, DC Comics, whatever, it is that very clear line a lot of the cases. Certainly, back in the Silver Age.
It certainly used to be,
and so on, of being good and bad, and that's it. So this is really good. And I mean, comics now look at that grey space as well.
Yeah. But this is speaking to the cover of Captain America issue 1 with him punching Hitler in the face. It's that, it's that simple good and evil was the old way of thinking of things. And it's brought out in the conversation from Zemo, which I love getting the explanation of who he really is, what he really believes. And he talks about it in terms of supremacy. And it's such a good conversation between Sam, Bucky, and Zemo, where he's saying the serum entitles people to supremacy. I don't care who they are. They have taken something to enhance themselves over other human beings. And once they do that, they're in exactly the same space as the Nazis. And you see Sam and Bucky nodding. And then he goes, and the Avengers. And then Sam goes, oh, hang on a second. Those are our friends you're talking about. But he's going, no, that's exactly why I did what I did. Yeah. I attacked them because they believe they're superheroes better than everybody else. And they're not better than anybody else. But the minute somebody takes that serum, that's who they become. And it bleeds into that great conversation between Sam and Karli, where he repeats the same thing to her. And I love her response. I love the conversation that's in there where he's going, you've hurt people. You're killing people. That can't be the right way to go. A friend of mine says that that's supremacy. And she goes, oh, I'm absolutely anti-supremacist. But if innocents get in my way, I'd kill them again. And then she's like, oh, hang on a second. You've made me say something I didn't want to say. You've made me sound much worse than I am. But it is a great concept to bring in, you know? She wants the world her way to help her out. And at the cost of innocence. So
yeah, I think Zemo is just phenomenal. I love that because it's again, I've said this before. It's coming from how he was portrayed in Civil War, and again here, it's this counterpoint to hero worship, I guess, and the possible dangers of that. And I mean, in effect, like you say, he says anyone on the path to being a superhero is on the path to superiority. And it's that he's not saying that the Nazis are the Avengers, and vice versa. Yeah. It's the idea that the core of Nazi belief was this idea of superiority. Yeah. And I guess what turns good superheroes or, to bad superheroes is the idea that superiority makes them different. I mean, actually, it's Magneto in that sense. The very thing that he, was subjugated to, he begins to, advocate this idea that we are superior to humans. Yeah. By taking the serum, we are a superior human. Yeah. And that this just messes with, I guess those complexities of ego, of what's right and wrong. And I think you see this with sort of gradually bubbling with John Walker about this idea of, it being inferior or jealous, despite having been told he's the best thing since sliced bread, and having his ego massaged, and he gets, that it plays into that. And I think I love having this character. Yeah. Absolutely love having this character in this show. Absolutely. And in the Marvel universe, because I think he's just so good. Yeah. Again, once again, he's one of the best villains that Marvel have had. He has a really understandable position and explains it so well, where you go, I can't fault that. No. I might have the t-shirt for Captain America, but I can't fault your concept that anybody who is superior has a superiority complex. Let's take them down.
Yeah, it's ingrained, the supremacy part is ingrained in Nazi ideology of the Ubermenschen, the Ultraman. It's essentially that they are superior to all other races, therefore the Aryans, the all that aspects of it. And it's all triggered, and that's why no matter what, they have to keep Zemo alive and around at the end of this series. Right, yeah. That's Marvel, my opinion. Like, Marvel have to, because he and I mean this actually in a better way, he is the anti-Steve Rogers in that, and I don't mean the Red Skull. He is a bad guy, yes, fine, because but it's more his ideology is actually, as you said, it's impeccably unflawed in that you can't. The actions are flawed. In the way he goes about it is flawed. The ideology is that everyone should be equal to a degree. Is not flawed. The equality to all is, when you get into it, is communism and socialism and a few others. Anyway, all the isms. I really enjoyed having him here basically, the reason I like having Zemo around is that he can give that differing point of view to the Avengers. He is there to be when I say the anti-Steve Rogers, the opposing view to Bucky, the opposing view to Sam, and kind of give them that, no, look, your way is fine, but here's the differing point of view, and here's why you need to listen. Yeah.
Well, one of the central themes of the show, of Falcon the Winter Soldier, so far has been, it's about context and perspective.
Yeah.
Whatever your context is and whatever perspective you come from, you believe you're in the right. Karli absolutely believes she's in the right. We've talked about it. A lot of our fellow defenders have talked about it. You can see Karli's point. You can see why she's doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
You can see Zemo's point. You can see why he's doing what he's doing. You can see why Sam's doing what he's doing. And you can also see why Walker's doing what he's doing. All of these people have got a perspective where they came from that tells them they're on the right path. But I love how Zemo breaks this down. I love how it turns into, as I say, the conversation with Sam and Karli, where Sam kind of gets her to admit that she is doing something wrong here. He says to her, well, are you going to create more people for your army? Are you going to use the serum to create more people? And she realizes in that conversation, actually, maybe that's not the right path to go down here. Maybe I don't need to create more super soldiers.
Yeah.
And it felt like in that moment, she would be on the right side with Falcon. She may put aside her methods and maybe work with Sam and do things differently in that moment.
Well, that's
for
it.
A second.
I mean, that's it. I think it's playing with the idea, I guess, that has increased over the last 5-10 years, this idea of polarization. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's like, and polarization of views in that you see that in American politics where they can't work across the aisle type of thing, or any kind of politics.
Yeah.
Sony versus Xbox.
Or you see it,
PlayStation versus Xbox, said Chris, just in case you didn't hear him.
It's this idea of not listening to other people in order to adjust and that adjustment isn't some undermining of your principles. And I think that's the thing. I think for me with Zemo, and it's not that I'm 100% sure on this yet, but coming to what Chris was saying there, I don't think he's entrenched. Yes, he has a clear thing to destroy the serums and he doesn't like super soldiers, but we do have a kind of a little kind of glint into the fact that he recognizes that Steve Rogers was the one person that was maybe different from the Red Skull, that he somehow managed to retain his level-headedness, I guess, and where he came from, that the Red Skull couldn't, and I think you see that, and I think also the great question that Sam asks Zemo, which I don't think he answers, is, but what about Bucky? Because you're working with Bucky, are you going to kill him at the end of all of this? Yeah. What's your view on Bucky? Because he is also has the super soldier aspect to him.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that potentially, Zemo has a way of doing things and he has a clear goal, but that's not to say necessarily that he will wipe all of the super soldiers out. He might not kill Bucky, but the jury's out. I think it's just the question being posed by Sam is great, and he doesn't answer it.
Exactly, and I wonder if that's just, well, I'm not going to tell you I'm going to kill Bucky whenever I get a chance. I think he expected that moment in Civil War where he pits Bucky and Steve versus Tony Stark. I think he expected that moment to lead to the death of Bucky, the death of Steve, the death of Tony. I think he expected that whole battle to go down that way. So I don't think he was ever intending to keep Bucky alive. He's another super soldier that he's willing to take out. Just want to bring in here, just in case you haven't seen Captain America, the First Avenger in a long time. It is really important because this does come from that conversation with Zemo. It's really important to remember there were hundreds of possible candidates to become Captain America at the time. Dr. Erskine, the person who came over from Germany with this serum, chose Steve Rogers, someone that couldn't even make it into the army. He'd failed the tests for the army multiple times, and he's the one given the serum to become Captain America because of his heart. But there were loads of other options that were available, and the army would have chosen anybody else other than Steve Rogers, effectively. Yep. It was only because Erskine pushed and said, we'll give it to him first, see how he works out. I still have loads of other serum, don't worry. We can give it to somebody else if this doesn't work out and if it isn't the right choice. The army would have chosen somebody else, but then the serum got destroyed, so Steve was the only person that got the serum. So it is really important to see that, because we're seeing now other people taking the serum. We're seeing Karli and her team. We're seeing Bucky even taking the serum, and we're seeing Walker, as we'll talk about later on in the episode, taking the serum now. None of those people are Steve Rogers, as Zemo calls out. There is only one Steve Rogers. What's happening here is other people who don't deserve to become super soldiers are getting their abilities enhanced, and it's not working. It's not a good idea for the world. So it does play into what Zemo does here. He's the one that shoots Karli when, after that conversation with Sam goes wrong, because Walker breaks into the room in the middle of the conversation. Just when she's about to turn, it feels, Walker breaks into the room. Karli gets away. Zemo instantly does what he will always do when given the opportunity. He takes down a super soldier. He shoots her, gets the serum on the floor, smashes all the serum, preventing any future creation of super soldiers, almost. But that's Zemo in a nutshell right there. He's basically doing exactly what he said he would do. You put a super soldier in front of me and I have a shot, I'm going to take the shot.
Yeah, exactly. I think that whole thing, you know, as I say, Zemo's just got that clear purpose. Yeah. And I think that little scene where he's going after Karli, maybe it'll be Zemo that ultimately has something to do with the longevity of John Walker. Who knows? And certainly, that conversation where he has a bit of admiration for Steve Rogers, despite him, you know, being a super soldier. And you see that contrast between the two.
He's almost saying Steve is the exception to the rule.
Yeah. Exactly.
Here's my rule. Everybody dies, but Steve's already gone, so it doesn't matter.
I love that scene where we do see Zemo kind of smashing the vials and is essentially knocked to the floor by the shield and fully out. And then you see Walker find that serum.
Yeah. I
have a question. I'm wondering, is there any other vials left? Was it just the one vial? Did Zemo steal a vial? Did he? Because he smashed a lot of them. I'm wondering if there's any other ones. Is it going to be like it rolls, the camera pans back at the end of episode 6, and in between we see someone go back into the darkness and find one blue vial?
I think it'd be weird for Zemo to steal it because his purpose is to destroy all the vials. But we do have a quick conversation between Nico, one of the flag smashers that we talked about earlier, and Karli, where he says he's gone back into the warehouse and all the vials are gone. So he doesn't even know about the one that was taken by Walker. Yeah. Of course, there's a possibility that somebody else got in there in between those two moments, that Walker taking the vial and Nico going to check on the ones that were left behind. So it's possible that somebody else has another vial out there. But I think right now, this story of having only one last vial and Walker's the one that takes it is where they're going in the show.
It's the little girl. It's the little Turkish delight girl. That's it.
She's taking the final vial of the
13-year-old Captain America.
Yeah.
So this lands us essentially back in Zemo's hideout, his flat, his home away from home in Riga, and we get all these great conversations.
Yeah, it's a really nice place that he has, and I think we mistakenly thought last episode that he was saying that he was going to meet somebody in Riga, but it's actually just one of his apartments, one of his
safe house,
extra places. Hey, he's got loads of places around the world.
He's a baron. He's now rich. He is essentially the Tony Stark. It's just like, oh, I have a place in Riga. Oh, I have a place in Milan. Oh, I have a place in Berlin.
Yep.
And I really enjoyed this. And then we get Walker essentially slamming in the door, him and Battlestar, and they're purposely building John Walker as this despicable douche. Like he's the guy that you just like. You're like, why? What? Everything about you is antagonistic. The way you talk, the way you act, like you're being talked down by your sidekick Battlestar. Like, and we get then him and Sam going toe to toe, essentially. Both verbal and physical, essentially. And Sam essentially owns Walker verbally with that great quote, which I'll let you guys say.
It's absolutely great. I love that, Walker coming into the room, trying to tell them all, order them all to hand over Zemo, and Sam saying, the only thing you're running in this room is your mouth.
Yes.
And it does lead to, it leads to Walker, this kind of, we've seen him as the kind of the caged animal earlier on when he was told to wait just 10 minutes for Sam to have a conversation with Karli, and you see him pacing back and forth, waiting to punch in the person he's supposed to punch because he's Captain America now. That's what he thinks Captain America's supposed to do. And here we see him, as you say, go toe to toe with Sam. He's got the shield in hand and then he puts it down and goes, oh, that'll make it fairer now, me versus you, mano a mano kind of thing. And then the Dora Milaje step in, and we have I think, one of the best fight sequences we've seen this season, and it's in a small room. The Dora Milaje are so good with all of the tools they're using. It's so interesting to see them fight. Everybody gets involved eventually, but we do have those moments with Bucky standing back, watching Battlestar and Walker go up against the Dora Milaje. And you can see him just kind of smiling, going, they don't even know what they're up against here. They think they can actually fight these guys. There's no way that's going to happen. Your shield is vibranium. Well, guess what? So are their spears, you know? Yeah. I really loved the fight. I thought it was really cool, really reminiscent of the casino battle in Black Panther.
That was it. There you go. I couldn't place my finger on that. It was because it's that close quarters spear that Okoye uses in that scene, and that was it. I just couldn't place my finger on it. Thank you.
Like they're doing the spinning around the neck, exactly like Okoye did.
Exactly. That fight.
It's an awesome fight. I love just how confident the Dora Milaje are. You know, we have jurisdiction wherever effectively we need to have jurisdiction. You do not tell us, Captain America, what we can and can't do. I just loved it. And as you say, the fight scene was awesome. I love how the spear goes into that sort of column, and then Ao pushes Captain America back and he bounces off it, and the spear just doesn't budge. I loved all of this. I love the fact that you just gradually see, you know, Zemo's still drinking his cherry blossom tea or whatever it is, and then it reminded me of Homer Simpson backing into the hedge, you know, in that meme, and where he's just kind of like into the bathroom, close, lock the door, and makes his escape. He's a sensible guy, Zemo.
He certainly is.
You would absolutely do that. And as you say, everyone else, in the end, it seems Sam and Bucky get involved to stop, Lamar and John Walker effectively being sort of beaten to a pulp, I guess. And we see that Bucky's arm has got an off switch, which I thought was really, really good.
Did you know it could do that? No.
It felt like something from a Kung Fu movie.
Yeah, exactly.
The kind of 3-point touch and his arm falls off. I love, you know, Sam kind of going, did you know that happened? And poor Bucky not realizing that that's a possibility. But yeah, they're always going to put a little fail-safe switch in, those wonderful Wakandans. Very smart. But the fight itself ending with the true Steve Rogers moment from a member of the Dora Milaje, where they kick the shield into their arm. That really felt like, you want someone to hold the shield? We'll take the shield if you want it, you know? Really cool little moment.
And I think, you know, it ultimately leads to John Walker's ego being dented just that little bit more. You know, we had it with Sam giving him the verbal takedown, and he's just had the physical takedown by the Dora Milaje. You know, he goes, they weren't even super soldiers. Yep. You know, this is a guy who has been praised with Purple Hearts, has an idea that he is, you know, celebrated, certainly at least through the media, with now that he's Captain America. And there's just this chip away in the back of his mind on his ego that he's in a sense out of his depth. And this has been proven twice in a very short space of time. And I think that's a nice little sort of degradation of who he is, like, and him trying to somehow process this.
Exactly. Awesome scene. Really like that fight. I really like that talking down Karli. Those two big moments from the episode. Just a quick one for bullet point 4. Just talking a little bit about some of the other characters that are playing in around this, these scenes. Karli contacting Sarah, Sam's sister, and effectively threatening her kids. Making reference to the fact that she knows where she lives effectively. You know, I'll go down to the dock behind your house, if you don't, get Sam involved here. You already mentioned the conversation with them about whether Sam would work for this Captain America, and Sarah kind of saying, well, the government don't care about us, so why would I care about their symbol, from Sarah, which I thought was really important. Continuing on, the conversations that we've had, about Sarah and their situation, throughout the season. I thought it was a good moment, but it is all about, Karli trying to get Sam and Bucky separated from Captain America and Battlestar, having those two groups separated so she can talk to Sam one-on-one again. and the rest of her team can take out Walker and Lamar. What did you think about this one, Chris? The kind of this idea of what she's doing here, separating them and threatening his family, threatening Sam's family. Not great.
No, this is the shorthand for me, from the writer's perspective, to show, okay, Sam nearly brought her back, but she's gone. She is no longer redeemable. She will be a villain. Like, she's basically crossing that unwritten rule line, which is you do not threaten to kill kids just to get what you want.
Like, Sam reasonably takes it in his stride. He is pretty worried, but when he says it to her, and Karli's like, well, I wouldn't hurt them. I just wanted to see if I could trust you. And at least I was watching it going, but how does Sam know he can trust you? You literally called up his sister, told her that you've been watching her property, and that we can get to you and your kids if we need to. Like, that's a more significant threat than just calling her up and saying, I can get to you. She specifically said, we've been watching you, basically.
I guess it does verify his intentions pretty quickly in that he meets her and doesn't immediately try to kill her, or, take her into custody, because, Sam wouldn't kill her, I don't think. And so, like, it does verify his intentions for her, which I think I kind of also took as part of why she was doing this. It was to separate the two groups, but also to get that what's Sam's intentions, because his previous talk with her was interrupted by John Walker. It's kind of, it's a trap, so I think it's kind of both here. I mean, she does kind of say, I would never have gone after them, whether we believe her, I don't know at this stage.
It's like saying she'd never kill, and she just killed the GRC office.
But it does bring in a really interesting conversation that she says in that she says to Sam, I would never kill you because you mean nothing to the controlling governments, the GRC. You're not this big player. The symbol, the taking down of the symbol is taking down Captain America.
Yeah. But essentially from this, we get a call from Sharon to say that they was split off. Like they were split and they're going after Walker. Sharon has access to spy satellites.
I love that. Yeah, that's in the call from Sam where he calls her up and says, would you be able to help me out? And she says, I might have access to 2 satellites. I think we're going to have to talk about this really quickly. The theory that she is possibly the power broker, as we talked about last episode. There's just, because of the way she's on that call with Sam and walking through a very heavily armed guard area. There's not much there for this episode, but just because she's having that walk through while on the phone, everybody seems to know her. They're obviously protecting something very important there. It really does feel like that's the power broker's minions, and they know Sharon very well.
Yeah.
So she does say to Sam a line about the power broker wants his serum back from Karli, and then Karli gets a message almost verbatim for what Sharon has said, that he wants his serum back, effectively. So it just is still pointing towards Sharon potentially having taken over the role of power broker in Madripoor. So I thought that anyway when I watched the scenes. John, anything?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of indications here that, as you say, walking down the street with all the heavily armed guys and being quite comfortable with it. The access to satellites. I mean, there's something more than just simply a stolen art dealer here, for sure. Absolutely, for sure.
Yeah. It was also only on my second or third viewing that I realized what was happening with the plan for Karli. There's just a weird moment where Falcon effectively jumps off to fly off to Walker when he gets that call from Sharon, and Bucky jumps off the side to follow Sam and is interrupted in midair by Karli punching him in midair. And I was kind of going, why is she doing that? And it was only when I realized that she was trying to keep them separate. That's her role in this plan, is to keep Sam and Bucky there. And they were about to leave and go off. So she was trying to stop that from happening. But it just seemed really weird. I was like, why did she suddenly pounce in the middle of air to take out Bucky there? Oh, right. She's supposed to be keeping them here so that Walker's an easier target for the rest of the Flag Smashers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it, again, looked great.
It was cool. Yeah. Yeah. The only thing that didn't look great in this episode is the scene directly after that, when Bucky's running down the street and they've clearly sped up the footage. It looks exactly like sped up footage.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the one. Remember, it was Wonder Woman 84?
Right.
Remember, she was running down, like, Washington, D.C., that main big avenue.
Right.
And they essentially had her on a wire running. And it was like her thing's supposed to be like, she was running super fast, like Wonder Woman speed. It just looks odd. And then we've seen it now when, like, Winter Soldier is going, when Bucky's going after the van in, what was episode 2? Remember, it wasn't even human. It was just a CGI human kind of running and then jumping on a van or the truck. It's that super speed, super soldier run. Just whatever it is, I can watch a person fly. I can see someone shoot webs. I can see someone like fire like blue blasts. All looks great. Super speed running seems to be just I'm just like, no.
It was kind of like Benny Hill.
It
was just, it's kind of just the very short steps, but very, very quick sort of, it didn't kind of quite work that well when he jumps down and then runs off down the street. It looked, as you say, they had sped up the footage or whatever they had done.
It's a cheap technique. That's how the Flash would have been made in the 80s. Let's get on to our final bullet point for the episode, talking about Walker and the Shield. I suppose it's kind of it is the big moment. I'm sure everybody's talking about this moment, so let's talk about it ourselves. It kind of kicks off from, as you mentioned earlier on, John, from Walker and his feeling of other people being able to beat him constantly. All of these super soldiers, all these people with powers being able to beat him, and then being beaten by somebody that doesn't have powers, that has better training than him, which was the one thing that he's constantly falling back on. He is the best example of the army. He's the best example of training, overcoming everything. And the Dora Milaje beat him. So we get a conversation between himself and Lamar, going for a coffee, having their discussion about who he is and whether he would have taken the serum, and whether Lamar would have taken the serum if offered to him. And we get a little bit more insight here about who he is. We had that scene from episode 1 where they reeled off all of his achievements, and we find there's a little bit of darkness maybe behind him getting these 3 medals of honor. He describes it as 3 medals of honor for the worst day of my life.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. The thing to remind him constantly of the 3 worst days of his life, because of all the people that were killed, his fellow soldiers and stuff like that. That's the way I was taking it. Right. Just the general sort of disaster that they found themselves in, for him to show that bravery or valor or heroic actions, right. I guess. Yeah. But
see, I wonder if it's that he got 3 medals of honor for doing, or 3 badges of honor for doing specific missions that he was told to do by the government, because that would play in again to this American Army version of Captain America that is John Walker, someone that followed what he was told to do effectively, but he feels bad about it. You know what I mean? I
took it as essentially he killed a lot. Mm-hmm. Basically, it's it's that kind of, okay, his crew was killed, or his unit was killed, and he went on a killing spree. Okay. He basically took down the insurgents, whatever we want to call it,
right,
and cleared that. Like, basically, he survived an IED and basically did that. Like, he goes blind with rage, which we see later on.
Which we certainly see even before he's taken the serum. He's gone blind with rage a few times in this episode. I wonder, are we going to get the traditional flashback episode where we'll see what it was that gave him those 3 badges of honor next episode, potentially? A little 20-minute slot in the episode showing who Walker was in the army. That would be interesting to see, I think.
I hope not. I hope what we get is just essentially in the next episode him being stripped down by the US government, disavowed by the US government, basically going, like, they take out his file, John Walker, like, we did this, like, look what you did previously. We thought this was behind you. We gave you the Medal of Honor, blah, blah, blah. You are no longer, and they rip the A off his chest kind of thing. It's like, you no longer deserve the shield. You are not Captain America.
Right.
And that's the step too far for him, because essentially what I take from this, and taking more and more, his feelings of inadequacy is what drives him. He feels he must be the best of the best.
Yep.
He must be the top peak physical human, as we hear from the MIT studies. He wants to be studied all the time. He's the best officer. He wants to be the best Captain America. And all that we're seeing, and all he's seeing, is everyone saying, well, you're not Captain America.
Yeah. And his idea is, why take a knife to a gunfight? You know, he's coming up against the flag smashers that have the serum coursing through their veins. He's dealt with just, I guess, better trained people, with the Dora Milaje, and sort of certainly more wittier people with Sam. And all of it is just his insecurities about maybe how good he is, plus the whole mantle of Captain America sort of weighing him down. I mean, it's interesting we get Bucky sort of making the observation that there's something wrong with Walker. As you say, there's a lot of moments where he's kind of gets lost in his own thoughts, and you can see that throughout this episode.
But even the moment when Bucky's trying to block him from going in on that conversation with Sam and Karli, where he just looks at Bucky, goes, it must be so easy for you with that serum running through your veins. You know, he's got that real anger and aggression within him.
I would also say, in terms of anger and aggression, you wouldn't want him to be a dinner guest at your house, because he kicks so many doors in. I mean, if I was Zemo in that apartment, I'd be saying, right, the bill's going to the US government or something.
Could you use your hand to open a door, please?
Yeah, it's like everything is, I must smash this door open. I mean, even like that ornate door, as he's going after the flag smashers here in this final kind of big scene, I was like going, I hope that was a prop, that it wasn't the actual door of this fairly ornate building, I guess. But, yes, it was like smashy, Captain America, you know, brings a sledgehammer to crack a nut, basically.
Speaking of smashy, Battlestar is broke.
Yes. The Cylons have got him.
Yeah, like this is when you talk about bringing a gun to a knife fight. Yeah, well, this is kind of what happens when a normal human being goes up against superpowered individuals. But he had nothing. He didn't have wings, vibranium tipped wings, or anything like that. Like Sam, he's not trained like Sam. So essentially, yeah, he gets thrown into that pillar with some force by Karli. And yeah, I didn't think they'd kill him. I thought, like, essentially that was he's out and his back is broken, or blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But when you think about it, if you're thrown with that force in your neck, that is your trigger moment.
There is a bit about this fight, which is, it's a great fight. I love, the call out from Walker that why is there so many knives in this room? Yeah. Everybody attacking each other. But there is a thing about this fight where, if you think about it, apart from, Sam and Lamar, everybody else in that room is superpowered. Everybody else in that room right then has taken the super soldier serum, and they're punching each other, and it's escalating. The punches and the fighting is getting stronger and stronger. Lamar got captured when going in, and we see him doing that awesome move where he's able to cut himself out of a full hog tie, basically, is what he has. Yeah. And I thought it was interesting, just to point it out, it's the uniform that he's wearing that has a knife in the right place for him to be able to cut his hands out of the situation he's in. And I think that's really smart. It would make sense that that's how you would build your uniform to conceal weapons to allow yourself to be cut out. But you're right. It was a bit of a shocker. Again, a comic book character. Battlestar is the partner of US Agent in the comic books, John Walker. So a bit of a surprise that we do have him killed here, but it shows consequences for everybody. And there is kind of that moment of, I don't know, a bunch of 15-year-old teenage gangs beating each other up, and then suddenly something really bad happens and everybody runs away. Because it's Karli is trying to hit Walker. Lamar gets in the way, doing the hero thing, trying to stop her from hitting Walker. And then he gets thrown against the wall. back cracked.
Yeah.
And he's gone. And everything just stops in that moment. I thought it was a really good moment because the battle has gone on for a while beforehand, but it does feel a little bit like a teenage fight. As I say, everybody runs away.
And then we get everyone's away. Walker jumps out that window.
Oh yeah,
he goes full on superhero landing.
That's a Cap scene, isn't it? That is a Captain America jump through the window, land on the car, and kind of stand up. It's not like exactly like the superhero landing. It is a Captain America landing, but with the tension of the music underneath. It's a total change in tone that you would expect from Steve Rogers' Captain America, leading to him to Walker catching up with Nico again, one of the Flag Smashers.
Yeah, I thought this was absolutely phenomenal. The Captain America landing, with the shield, but just the contrast with that sinister strings being played, which I just felt had hints of the Winter Soldier theme, which is, is electronic. It's like like a wind noise of the strings sort of building and building in a sinister way, but it felt hollow in that, John Walker was the outfit, but is not.
It's not Captain
America in the same way that Steve Rogers was. And I thought that was just so good, just having that kind of, I guess, like a, Winter Soldier theme just changed, or I guess a super soldier theme or a bad super soldier theme, I thought was like amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
Because you just know it's building, and as he runs after him, and it's just gradually building until he takes him down with the shield, at that fountain, with the shield to the back. And then, he just loses the plot and his rage overtakes him.
Yeah.
And you just have bludgeoning. It's bludgeoning with this shield in front of everyone.
And just the whole crowd watching on, filming it on their camera phones, as everybody does. Let's not intervene. Let's just film it on our camera phones so we can stick it on the internet afterwards. But you could absolutely tell that image of Walker as he picks up the shield covered in blood. That image is going wild. That's going to go wildfire across the world. This is absolutely, as the title of the episode, the whole world is watching. This is the end of his career as a substitute Captain America. And it feels like, I suppose that's part of John Walker's character. When you're in the army, there's things that you have to do, generally not shown to the world, but going ultra violent effectively. So when he's in a war zone, that may have been something that he's doing, but he's in the middle of a square here, in a normal town, everybody else going about their business. And now it's broadcast around the world effectively. But, I did notice one thing throughout these scenes, that Walker had a drip of blood coming out from underneath the mask the whole time. Which just felt really different. We've mentioned before that Disney Plus doesn't generally have blood on their TV shows, and throughout this season, it seems to be getting bloodier and bloodier as the episodes go on. They've been involving more and more blood. But yeah, it's kind of seems to be over for John Walker's Not My Captain America.
Yeah. Like he's buried his career much like he buried the shield in Nico.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, I didn't think this is how they'd go about it, like essentially making him the villain, but this is what they've done. They are showing this evil's wrong.
It's the loss of control, I guess.
Exactly that. It is I say anti-cap, it's not. It's just this is what happens when you have someone as power. This is the whole thing, is that this is what happens when you have all these superpowered individuals without control. Like and bringing guns to a knife fight. Yeah.
I mean, I guess as well, it's really interesting take. He has been put as this hero in Captain America in terms of taking Steve Rogers' place, like we saw earlier on in this series. And there's this idea that he's a hero because he's been given 3 Purple Hearts. And it comes back to this idea of, you don't see those covert operations. You don't know what happens.
Exactly.
Who may be the collateral damage in that? Who may be the fallen comrade and soldier by John Walker's side? It comes back to this idea of remembering the 3 worst days of my life through these purple hearts. But people with purple hearts would be courageous heroes. You know, it's that kind of idea of being commemorated it for valor and service above and beyond what you would normally do. And you wonder, what were the hard, messy choices that had to be done in that time to survive that encounter, that situation, which is kind of coming back to the point right at the start. And here it's on display. It's also because he's lost control and because of the situation, the death of his friend, effectively. But it's complete loss of control. And whilst in, you know, a remote mountain pass in Afghanistan, that wouldn't be seen. Here, it's in the middle of a square in Riga. And, you know, that final image where, again, it's the shot from below to give that heroic, imposing feel of Captain America with the shield and with the bottom part of it dripping in blood is just like a great subversion of that whole iconography, I guess, of what Captain America is.
That was your cover. That was your cover of a comic book. That is literally the Captain America covered in blood with a bloody shield, and it's still dripping.
It's the Hydra cap cover. This bad Captain America right there. If you didn't need it more clearly, they even have Nico going, but it wasn't even me that did that. Before he dies. He even calls out when being beaten by the shield, it wasn't even me that did that. So, this is not our Captain America. I think I called it out in episode 2. This is the Captain America you're supposed to hate before real Captain America comes back. A different Captain America comes back. So they have set this up throughout the season. That's kind of it for our points, for the episode. Any particular notes, that you guys want to talk about? The only one that's popping into my head is just, for the first time in this episode, I could really see Wyatt Russell, who plays Walker. I could really see Wyatt Russell, Kurt Russell's son. There's a moment when he's talking to Oya from the Dora Milaje where he really is embodying Kurt Russell. It really feels like something from Big Trouble in Little China, or from any of his 80s movies. So it just suddenly popped into my head. I know we talked about him being Kurt Russell's son before, but suddenly I was able to see the connection between the two of them as actors. It was quite funny to see on screen. Yeah.
The only thing for me was, and don't shoot me, but I thought the funeral of Momma Danja and that whole thing was kind of really kind of nicely done. I think like there was part of me that was when this felt more meaningful than Tony Stark's, which was kind of like, you know, as it was kind of like this little water feature being pushed out onto the lake. And then it was just like, look at all the superheroes as the camera kind of moves back towards the house. But it felt more emotive than the Tony Stark one. And I thought it was really weird that I kind of got that feeling at that moment.
Well, there's a real connection there, you're right, from the conversation from Karli, where she's saying that she adopted Karli after she lost her family and did the same for many of the other people in the room. So we were trying to work out what it was about, you know, the title that she's got, Momma Danja, is actually, she is their mother. She is their adoptive mother. It's not just a nice phrase that you call somebody a pet name. It is that she was mother to a lot of people in the group. But you're right, John, it is a really good scene. Can we also just call out Zemo and his Turkish delight, and enticing the children.
It was a bit weird.
In that area. That was a bit weird, definitely. Very, very odd. I'm not a fan of Turkish delight anyway, but the feeling I got from him was like Varys, a character from Game of Thrones who gets the children of the city to bring him all of his information. It's just a little weird having this guy walk into the center of a courtyard with loads of children and a bag of sweets, sing a song to them and bring them all towards him and then go, whisper in my ear, little children. Just feels a bit weird from Zemo.
Well, no, I didn't take it like that. I just took it as Varys, and that Zemo just took a different approach to trying to get the intel, which was, you know, bribery. It was bribery. That's all it was, with sweet Turkish delight for kids that are hungry and running low on supplies, and effectively kind of, you know, his whole conversation with them was, I've come to pay my respects. So it was pure manipulation, but to purely get intel.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw this more as a Varys type approach with his network of little sparrows in Game of Thrones. It's just and he was far more successful at finding out where Karli was than Sam or, Bucky. And it was guessed that he understands the idea that, children have eyes and they can be just as good a source of intel.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't find anything weird.
Yeah, but kids don't take sweets from strangers. Chris, any final notes for this episode?
I endorse that message.
That Turkish delight should have been off. Unless he has someone going in restocking his things.
Do you know that's entirely possible? Maybe barons do that they send people in to replenish their stocks of Turkish delight.
Yeah. He does have a Learjet, so I guess
it's true. But he does call out to his butler that if any of it on the smell test is off, give it to the rest of them.
Any of the food in the plane,
but not the Turkish delight. I guess Turkish delight is so well preserved with the amount of sugar in it that it's probably all right.
Excellent.
It's just the fact that it's Turkish delight, I guess.
Yeah, awful.
And now I want a Turkish delight.
That's it for our discussion about the episode of Falcon the Winter Soldier, episode 4. The world is watching. Chris, do you defend this episode of Falcon the Winter Soldier?
Yes, straight up. I'm not going to bury the lead like Walker buried the shield. It was everything I want. It has that level of writing, that emotion, that empathy, that the direction, the cinematography, the fight scenes. It just has it all. It had Falcon back in his suit. It had superpowers. It's why I love the MCU, but it's also why I'm starting to so much love the MCU on Disney Plus. Because we're getting these deeper, more compassionate, these well-written stories where in one of the films, usually these stories have to be finished in 2 hours and a half.
Yeah. Now
we're getting up to 5 hours, 6 hours of, or just below, of these deep globetrotting superhero romps that makes you to talk about, okay, is there supremacy to take a super soldier serum? It does make you think, and it also makes you, the whole Killmonger analogy is are sometimes these villains actually, their motives are right, but sometimes their actions are wrong.
Yeah.
It does make you question those things, and that's why I absolutely defend and love this episode. Also, I just can't wait. Two more episodes. I think I know where it's going. But right now they are going to take me. I'm on the river. I'm gently following we're about to go to the rapids, but I'm gently following the river.
Excellent.
John, do you defend this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, episode 4?
Oh, absolutely. I give this 5 Turkish delights out of 5.
Wow.
I really enjoyed this episode. It was this whole thing of, what it is to be a hero, and where does that line lie, when you stop being that hero. And I just loved the whole thing around this about symbols, about, approaches to an adversary in Karli, Sam being very diplomatic, coming at it from a sympathetic or empathetic point of view, trying to understand her motives and trying to sort of stop her using violent means to her ends, where, contrasted with John Walker, where it's, Broforce approach of, smashy,
yeah.
And just, having to use total force in everything.
Yeah.
And just then with the hero thing, seeing John Walker, he didn't start off as a bad guy, but you see the weight of what this uniform, what this symbol, what this iconography has done to him, seeing him sort of losing his confidence, feeling humiliated, having his ego sort of gradually knocked down a peg or two. And of course, all of this is being flagged by Zemo ultimately in his conversations about, what it means to be a superhero. And it's just so well done. I mean, I'm absolutely loving Daniel Bruhl as Zemo. To me, like, he feels like the sort of this voice in my head sort of asking these sort of tough questions, but his motives are, you know, he's saying these to, you know, unsettle and disrupt Sam and Bucky. You know, what's his relationship with Bucky ultimately when all of this plays out? Will he try and kill him because he's a super soldier? Is he that principled? I just think it's all this episode fantastically interesting from that point of view. And that final scene with the red on the shield, you know, is just so iconic as well. And just that different version, effectively, in Karli's mind, this is what she was talking about previously. This idea that the shield is a symbol of a bygone era, both because it's a shield, I guess, but also seeing it being wielded and bloody. I guess the interesting thing as well, and the final thing for me was, like, the death of Lamar. I think it needed that for that trigger, effectively. Ultimately, this is John Walker's trigger protocol, like the Winter Soldier, is that he's lost a good friend, confidant, and comrade in his unit, and this was his trigger word, and I thought, or trigger action. But I think as well, the fact that Lamar, you know, not being superhuman, you know, we've talked about it a lot, where, well, if I wasn't superhuman and I had a vibranium shield chucked at my head, the likelihood is I'm going to die. And in the same way, the force that he connects with that stone pillar, is most likely going to crush and break his spine, to the point where he's dead. And like, that is actually kind of a really important point in itself, that these, and again,
and don't bring a non-super soldier to a super soldier fight.
Exactly. And it points back to what Zemo is saying around that path to being a superhero, or super soldiered, I guess, is the idea of superiority. And it's shown in that physical act that Karli knows she's better physically than Lamar, but doesn't hold back. She still launches him at that post. So I absolutely thought this was a fantastic episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And 5 Turkish delights out of 5.
Excellent.
Derek, do you defend this episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I love the structure of this episode. Really love this episode. Totally defend it. The idea that on the surface it is about the descent of Walker into this villainous turn towards the end of the episode, or this really aggressive turn towards the end of the episode, is kind of the overarching part of it, and can seem like the main theme of the episode. What we also get below that in the show, which is Falcon and Winter Soldier, we get clearly the change to the Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier no longer exists. We get that at the beginning of the episode. I think that's a great opener for it. And then what we really get in the episode is why Sam should be Captain America. We see what kind of hero Sam is. A person who's willing to sit down and talk with a terrorist to try and convince them to no longer be a terrorist is the right kind of hero, right? It's not someone that's going to walk into a room and punch somebody in the face until they bleed and die. We get a real hero here in Sam, and I think it's the right setting for this show now. 6 episodes in, I thought it was such a well written episode, and such a great episode. And having the Dora Milaje fight in there was so good. Really, really great scenes having them in there. There's talk of a series set in Wakanda as another show coming to Disney Plus in the future. Totally in for that. Want to see Dora Milaje in more missions in the future outside of just Black Panther 2. I think they're cool characters. So seeing them outside of Wakanda again is awesome.
Absolutely. I should say the 2 fight scenes for me were amazing, with the Dora Milaje in Zemo's apartment, and also seeing Sam again using his suit and his wings to take on the super soldiers. You know, unlike Lamar, you know, he has additional appendages in the jetpack and the wings that he needs to kind of bring that parity with the super soldiers. But I liked how he uses them again. Like he kind of does the clothesline with the wings. So
I love that little engine burn he does.
Yeah, that was cool as well.
One of the guys that's attacking him, really cool. That's it for our defense. Before we get on to our feedback, and there's lots of great feedback coming up, John, let's go over to the pub and get the pub quiz question for this week's episode. An easier one this week, I think.
Well, yeah. Let's see. Yes, fellow quizzers, fellow defenders, question 4 from this week's episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The question is, what is the final trigger word in the Winter Soldier's activation protocol?
Oh, very good. I saw an interview with Sebastian Stan, who was saying that people walk up to him in the street and say the Winter Soldier activation words to him in the street, thinking they're being very funny, and he's like, what do you want me? What do you want to happen here? Do you want me to turn into the Winter Soldier and punch you, or is that what you expect to happen here? Really funny. But do you want to give the question one more time, John?
Yes. What is the final trigger word in the Winter Soldier's activation protocol? You can send in your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, and of course, as we mentioned before, there are 3 Funko Pops of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So
Falcon, Winter Soldier, Baron Zemo are the 3 Funko Pops we have available. Just email us into feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com or pop on over to the website, tvpodcastindustries.com. There's a page on there that has all the questions from each of the episodes so far, in case you missed any. Excellent. Let's get on to feedback. As I mentioned earlier on, we got a first piece of feedback is from Matthew Murdoch, who has sent in some thoughts about the score and the opening scene. Here's Matt's thoughts.
Hello, boys. Matt here again. I was so gut punched with emotion in that first scene that I literally had to pause and just sit there for like 5 minutes because it was such a great character moment. Something that we really needed to see. I didn't realize we needed to see it, but we totally needed to see it. And as usual, one of the things that I always point to make emotional moments like this so much better than they would be just by themselves without any score is the score. First of all, let me just say that the fact that they included some of Ludwig's score from Black Panther, or at least some of the themes from there with the Wakanda stuff, that was absolutely fabulous. But the way this piece of music for this big scene with Bucky worked for me was the fact that there was so much tension in it because you never really got away from the root of tonality being in every chord. And then the chords got bigger. The bottom got lower. The top didn't really get too much higher, but the complexity of the chord within got bigger. It's almost like Bucky is reaching within himself in order to find the courage to resist the words. And that was just an amazing moment, and the score really helped it. There was a lot of tension, as I said, in it because one note went with every chord. And that was the note that centered everything home. This note. And the shape sounding bigger was a result of the bass line going down and the top not really changing, but that still made for bigger spaces, which, again, I think represents going deep within yourself, at least for this particular scene. But just to look at the shape, it sounds like this. And the third thing that made it, of course, so beautiful is the fact that it's so drawn out and that these shifts that happen make every chord count, just like every moment that Bucky is able to resist count. Anyway, super enjoyed this episode. This feels like a 5-hour plus movie that they're making here. just one long stringed movie, and I love it. Hope you guys enjoyed it too. Take care.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that. Yeah, first of all, I love having your feedback, your voicemail feedback on the music and the breakdown of it, because agreed with you. I didn't take the break during the Winter Soldier scene, but it's still one of my most favorite aspects of that opening, or any opening. And yeah, this 5-hour film, it's just amazing. I can't wait to see more.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt. I love the thoughts on the tunes that you give. And yeah, that whole opening scene just was filled with so much emotion, that internalized struggle. And it's hearing about how the score kind of draws that out as well. Is great. I also like the little Wakandan snippets as well through when the Dora Milaje show up in the scenes as well, just as that little sort of thematic nod to Wakanda.
Absolutely, it really does have that kind of feeling once you hear that little beat. That feeling that one of the Wakandas is going to come on screen is always really, really cool. Thanks so much for that, Matt. We also got an email in from Jimmy Urin called "Feedback at Last." He says, "Hi guys, great to be back and listening to your podcast after arriving somewhat late to the Disney Plus party. I'm working my way through WandaVision to dodge any potential spoilers. A quick word on that show first. 2 of the Avengers I had least interest in from both films and comics, recreating sitcoms I had mostly never watched. Gave me fairly low expectations of the show, but I have to say I was pleasantly surprised and ended up binging most of the 25 minutes episodes. I particularly enjoyed Catherine Hahn's performance, but enough about that show. On to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Being honest, I was not sure how well Falcon and the Winter Soldier would go either. These 2 characters having had fairly limited time on their own in the past, but of course I should have had more faith in Marvel going by the first half of this season. Other than that spectacular opening scene, which was more impressive than most movie finales, I did find episode 1 a little bit slow. As interesting as it is to see inside the real lives of B-list superheroes, some of the boat and bank scenes felt a little slow for a 6-episode season, but perhaps they will pay off as the season continues. Really not liking the look of New Cap, although I'm sure that is the general idea. Getting the 2 leads together in episode 2 really stepped things up for me, adding some fun interplay, especially that face-to-face psych session, which was loads of fun and showed both characters' range of comedy. Whenever I think about Marvel military PTSD type stories, it inevitably takes me to the Punisher and Jon Bernthal's incredible performance. So it did make me wonder about a potential future cameo. One can only wish. But for me, episode 3 was where it really started to ramp up, with a range of locations to rival a Bond movie, a delightful Hannibal-style role for Zemo, which can only go one way in the long run, and some absolute ass-kicking from Sharon Carter, who seemed to have plenty of secrets of her own. Sprinkle in a Wakanda teaser at the end, and who knows where this will go next. Really looking forward to episode 4 now. I've not caught up yet with the later pods, but I'm looking forward to getting my quiz answers in soon. Thanks, Jimbo. Excellent. Great to hear from you, Jimmy. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Given that the director of the show, Kari Skogland, did work on the Punisher series, will she call out to Jon Bernthal to come back for an episode here? A suggestion that he possibly was the shooter in Madripoor last episode, that he was the person at the sniper that we weren't sure whether it was Sharon Carter. There's been some suggestions that maybe that was Jon Bernthal over on a mission in Madripoor on his own as the Punisher. What do you think?
Yeah, that would be awesome. For sure. I mean, it's possible.
It's
anything
fun
is
speculation.
Possible. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It probably won't be, but
yes.
I like the idea, because absolutely, the Punisher, at least, his army past does, fit to some degree into this series, the military element and PTSD element of this series for sure. And we hope, Jim, that you really liked episode 4 as much as we did, because I think, whilst they don't stray too far, they're still in Latvia, in this episode, it does take you on an absolute roller coaster of a ride around Captain America for sure.
Yeah, I do like the idea that Jon Bernthal, but it's a fun idea, because if he comes back, then you've got Charlie Cox and all of them to come back, and that's not going to happen.
That would be awesome. I think it's only Daredevil that can take down John Walker.
Yes.
That would be good.
Just a random Billy Club comes in off screen. We also got an email from Jerry with the subject line, John Walker, war criminal? Hey guys, the repercussions of the episode are tremendous for the MCU. John Walker has taken the super soldier serum and has become unhinged as the world watches on. The United States will spin this as Walker stopping a terrorist.
Maybe.
We learn that John Walker may have been a war criminal for the things he's done in the past. Will John Walker survive by the end of the show, or will we see Zemo kill him to protect Sam? Jerry in Niceville. Thanks for the email, Jerry. I think the opposite. I think the United States are going to just basically cut all ties with Walker.
Disavow.
Mm-hmm. He's gone off ranch, off reservation.
Yeah.
Because essentially it's the title of the thing, the world watching on, and this is the type of thing, the brutality of the United States, of their symbol in Captain America. They cannot have him being bloodied, literally, by someone else. So I think I like the idea that they try and spin it as him, but I think it's more the opposite. I think they're going to end up disavowing.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because he's also taken the super soldier serum, I guess, without any authorization from his superiors, unless there was something, in that they said, if you go on this mission, if you get the opportunity, take it. But I mean, we don't know that. So at the moment, it just seems like he has effectively broken orders. And so even that, I guess, is some court-martialable type of offense.
Exactly.
So be really, it's really interesting. Yeah. Thanks, Jerry.
And much like Bucky has his list of people he has to apologize to, I think this just put Walker onto Zemo's list of people he has to kill. Oh, not another super soldier now that I have to add to my list to kill. So whether it'll be to protect Sam or not, I think Zemo will have him in his sights now as the episodes go on. Thanks so much, Jerry. Next email in from Chloe Kolstad, who says, hello, Captain America is officially a supervillain. I loved how Sam wanted to talk Karli instead of using force first. We need more of that in real life. But then attention seeker wannabe Captain America ruined it. I thought there was would be something more with the candy that Zemo gave the kid, because who takes candy from some random guy singing a creepy song? I'm still curious about Sharon and what she is actually a part of. I wish the episodes were longer. Doesn't seem like Captain America or John got the kind of attention he wanted. Also, hope you read my previous email because I forgot to send it last Friday, from Chloe Cordero. Chloe, thanks so much for sending in your feedback. I did get your email on Saturday just after we recorded, so I unfortunately couldn't put it in to the episode, but really good to hear your thoughts about this episode.
Yes, thank you so much, Chloe, for that. Captain America's a bad guy. Woohoo!
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chloe. Definitely, he didn't get the attention he wanted, and he's literally thrown his shield out of his cot and into the face of a relatively innocent person in Nico.
Definitely, yeah, much more innocent even than Karli. A little
absolutely.
shout out to the Fantastic Geek podcast and actually their listeners, because they've been coming up with other names for Captain America, like Captain Faux America and Captain B America, which is one of my favorites for it. So you don't have to call him Captain America, because he's definitely not Captain America now.
And now he's Captain Killer.
He's US agent.
Yeah. And I forgot about the creepy song, actually. It was Baba Black Sheep, wasn't it?
It was.
Yes. I didn't realise that was creepy, because
it just feels creepy because he's walking up with a bag of sweets to children. It's
I remember having that sang to me as a kid. I guess it's some kind of precautionary tale about something or other. It's kind of in the same way as nursery rhymes and what have you. I don't know.
Baba Black Sheep.
Have you any wool? Yes, that's your rocks.
That's it. No cautionary tale.
No,
just a couple of rhyming couplets.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Our next piece of feedback comes in from Eric Zaid. He says, another great episode. I love the week by week release schedule, but oh man, do I wish I could get to the next episode right now. Just wanted toss out a couple of ideas for you. John did cut that guy's head off, right? Not a good look. A very heavy-handed way to telegraph the full heel turn by Marvel, but effective. Also, I couldn't help but notice the similarities between Zemo and the White Witch from Narnia. Turkish delight, bribery, sowing division with kids. That was a really creepy scene. Finally, my theory on the power broker was Sharon, but on a rewatch, I'm sure it's Zemo. Anyone who dances like that does so with the confidence that everyone there works for them. Just kidding. I'm sure it's Sharon. Thanks for the show, Eric. The memes about the dance from Zemo have been fantastic all week. They released a full hour-long clip over on YouTube. If you didn't get to see it, go check it out on YouTube. It is literally just a longer version of the scene we saw in the episode. It's about 45 seconds, looped for an hour, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I certainly just thought he had probably caved in the Flag Smasher's head rather than decapitated him. But I guess both aren't really a very good look either. Because I guess it's a bit too far for his head to kind of roll down the steps, kind of a la French Revolutionary guillotine type thing.
I don't think we were going to see that on screen.
No, I don't think so either. But yeah, thanks, Eric, for the feedback. Parthenia Locklear, her email says, I had a lot of little complaints throughout this episode, but none of that mattered once the last 20 minutes played through. Loved the Dora Milaje coming through and kicking butt. I kept that PG. I saw that coming. They kicked the cockiness right out of New Cap, but hey, Sam warned him. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh my, and the beautiful touch of death that she gave his arm. She brought the wolf down to a pup and put him in his place.
Mm-hmm.
Even absolutely
eject button here.
Even though Karli has clearly crossed the line and there's no turning back, the writing still makes you understand her struggle and her goal. I thought the scene with Karli and Sam was great, very well written. Mm-hmm. Walker losing his partner, well, that was inevitable. They clearly needed something to push him over the edge, and he was already struggling with the jealousy, the hate, his insecurities. He was a ticking time bomb. I do hate that his partner had to die that way. I liked his character. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was I think Lamar was kind of the good angel on John Walker's shoulder, really, to some extent. So I think, definitely agree there, Parthenia. Parthenia continues, this ending was wicked, and I loved every minute of it. I knew that he was going to go a little mad, but I did not think he was going to shield him to death. Mm-hmm. But gotta love the imagery, the blood all over the shield. He's definitely no Steve Rogers, and the serum showed exactly who he really was, and I think Karli knows she is mucked up. I think this was my favourite episode so far. I think this is the first episode that has me feeling excited for what's next. Good stuff. Okay, guys, take care. And no one asked me, but yes, I do defend this episode. Excellent stuff, Parthenia. So glad that you defend this episode. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it is... I actually think it's kind of iconic I know we've had this stuff in the comics, and these stories, this is where they're taking their inspiration from. But, for the MCU verse, whether it's in film, on TV, this is a really, iconic, just last 20 minutes, I guess, really with what happened. And it built so well, as well. So yeah, completely agree there, Parthenia.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Parthenia, for your feedback.
Yes, thank you so much, Parthenia. And yes, we will always ask, do you defend? Don't worry. Always. Now, boys, let's head on over to Facebook for some feedback. Where first up, we have Heather Wallace, who had this to say. From the title, I had a feeling Walker would be exposed, but that final shot was so shocking. On a lighter note, Zemo liking Turkish Delight endears him to me even more. Between his dancing and tasting sweets, he may be my perfect man.
I love it.
Heather, come on, he's a killer. You gotta aim higher. Heather goes on to say, I really like that the Turkish Delight is also a subtle nod to history geeks like me, that the Balkans has been a constant site of shifting borders and conflict for hundreds of years. Austria annexing the Balkans from the Ottoman Empire was one of the stepping stones to World War I. Having the action in this part of the world reinforces what the Flag Smashers are fighting for. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and I did not know any of that regarding the Ottoman Empire, so thank you for being a history geek, giving us this additional information. That makes a lot more sense now, the locale and the choice for Latvia.
Yeah, I have a feeling Turkish Delight is kind of maybe the Marmite of sweets. Either you really, really like it or you don't. It's kind of, it's not a boiled sweet and it's not chocolate, and it kind of is a weird jelly.
But if you cover it in chocolate, you get Cadbury's Turkish Delight, which is amazing.
Yes, that is true, actually.
We are not sponsored by Cadbury's Turkish Delight, unfortunately. Thanks so much for that, Heather. John Bucket, also over Facebook, says that final shot, the whole world is watching. Oh boy, it's going to kick off next episode. Derek Whitfield, simply put, shocked emoji. Dr. Bob Phillips says, it's been built into this, but I didn't expect the Shield of America to literally be dripping with the blood of a dispossessed person. Is the only way out of this to send the shield into space? Would it then become a sword, John Harrison?
It actually would.
It would not become a sword.
The sword is shield in space. No. I'm not letting this lie.
You're totally right, Bob. Bob says, I think we are all still very much being tempted into the idea of revolutionary versus terrorist being just a point of view. And I have to think I would have slid there. But Derek O'Neill, you reminded me of the 80s and a trip from mainland to Belfast and the way life just carried on as heavily armoured Land Rovers mounted pavements in a complex choreography with other vehicles, where I was faced with the reality of the UK Civil War that had wrecked so many lives. That keeps me watching this and trying hard to refuse the story they're trying to sell. It's a really interesting point, Bob. This is obviously a drama narrative, and as I mentioned earlier on, the whole show does seem to be about perspective and context. And they are really selling that everybody has an interesting perspective and a justifiable context for their actions in the show. But it's coming from the country that we're from and the history that we have as a nation, it does take on its own version of that context for ourselves as well.
Yes, there'll be the MCU version of the Troubles, known for years.
Well, Star Trek tried to touch that once and almost lost the episode from their entire run. It's a bit complex to be sticking it to.
Just a tad. We also got some feedback from Lisa Richardson, who said, from the first firelit scene in Wakanda to the brutal, bloody scene in Lafayette, this was quite an episode. Mm-hmm. Highlights for me were the amazing chemistry between Ao and Bucky throughout the episode, the low-key threat to Sarah from Karli, and finally seeing the real-life consequences of a non-powered human, Lamar, being knocked into a pillar by a superhuman, Karli. Battlestar's death was tragic, and now we can clearly see John Walker's descent into madness. Yeah, again, as you said, it's the real-life consequences of a non-powered human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you could say the same. Technically, Sam is non-powered, but he's got the wings, so it's that kind of like Battlestar was essentially just a guy with a bit of armor in a battle armor. That was
absolutely, yeah,
exactly.
I like Lisa's mention of the low-key threat to Sarah from Karli. Is Karli Loki?
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa.
Mephisto.
Well, yes, and the Flag Smashers have been able to do what the Cylons haven't for a long, long time.
Take out Battlestar. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Kelly Resenda says, well, that escalated quickly, and we have more bloody violence on Disney Plus. What? So, yeah, absolutely. A bit more blood, a bit more violence on Disney Plus.
Shocking,
they are
Kelly.
pushing the envelope here.
Yeah.
Jeff Childs also says, get this man an Emmy. Nice. Sebastian Stan was amazing in that opening scene with Ao. With no words, you could see all of the struggle and anguish in his face as he fought to be finally free of his programming. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Jeff. I think it was a really strong, intense opening there, and I just could not agree with you more, from the music to just Sebastian Stan's internalizing of whether he may or may not become the Winter Soldier again as Ao delivers the trigger words. Really, really good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Brandy Elise Anderson says, while rewatching this episode, I was amazed with the character comparisons that took place. I'll start with the two most powerful scenes. The episode was end-capped with two scenes depicting the characters overcome with raw emotions that stemmed from fear. Bucky has a positive release when he is consumed with relief and hope, while Walker's is definitely a negative outburst as he is consumed by rage. Mm-hmm. While Walker's movements at the end of this episode might have mirrored Steve's movements at the end of Civil War, his actions definitely did not. First, Steve didn't go for the kill shot, to the relief of Tony and all his stands. But what Walker and Steve did after was even more telling. Steve put down the shield. Mm-hmm. The two men who died at the end of the episode were the only two to compare Karli to Steve Rogers. It has been said this whole series, Steve Rogers equals idealistic America and John Walker equals realistic America, hits home when a character who grew up loving Steve Rogers and what the shield stood for, only to be killed by that shield. Mm-hmm. Sam not being interested in taking the serum shows why Steve chose him. He's a good man, and Steve said he trusted in people. I need more information on Sharon Carter. Why were her knuckles bruised and scraped, as well as the cut she had on her lip? So many questions. Also, Zemo was fully locked on to his end goal. He shot the scientists, shot and wounded the flag smasher Karli, and he smashed all the bottles of the serum as soon as he got a chance. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks so much, Brandy. I think on Sharon Carter, I noticed the little cut on her lip as well. I didn't see the bruised knuckles, but I kind of just wondered whether that was from the previous episode, whether it was just kind of continuity maybe from the previous episode.
I thought it was just from the Madripoor fight, yeah.
But I guess, still the context of Sharon in this episode has a lot of questions around it. I'm totally with you on Zemo. I think I just think he's fab character. I mean, the powerful scenes, the way you've kind of described them as this bookend, with Bucky and with Walker, and then also Walker's, whole, contrast with how Steve would have behaved in that situation, despite that same landing, that hero Captain America landing. It is really spot on. Completely agree, with you.
Thanks so much, Brandy.
Yes, thank you so much, Brandy. We also have a bit of feedback from Michael Walling, who says, as soon as Lamar was killed, I knew John Walker was going on a killing spree. That final shot of the blood-covered shield shows us the exact reason why John Walker was never worthy of it. He is full of vengeance and hate, whereas Steve Rogers was full of selflessness and love of all people. Mm-hmm. Even Zemo was forced to admit that Steve was unique among the super soldier community, and that says a lot coming from him. When given the opportunity to kill Tony at the end of Civil War for going after Bucky, he didn't, and disabled the suit instead. Compare that scene with the end of this episode, the similarity is striking.
Absolutely, yeah, really, really good points, Michael. Very similar to what Brandy was saying about those scenes.
Yeah, no, 100%. Finally, we got a piece of feedback from David, Mr. Ryder, who said, can we just have a round of applause for how badass the Wakandans are? Just came in kicking ass and then walked out.
I love that the final mode after the fights happened and one of them has the shield in hand and then they go, oh, Zemo's gone, and then just drop the shield and walk. They're done. It's like, our mission's over. Off we go. Awesome.
The way you said it, like they have their own show. Reportedly have their own show coming up on Disney Plus, and that's just going to be amazing. That is going to be like Afro-futurist, like kicking ass, taking names. You're going to have the Dora Milaje. You're going to have Shuri, most likely. You're going to have the White Wolf himself again. It's going to be so good.
Well, it's 5 different communities to talk about in Wakanda as well. Yeah. So it'd be really interesting to see more of the society and what's going on there. Thanks so much for that, David. Thanks to everybody for your feedback over on Facebook. If you want to join our Facebook group, you can go to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries. Put a spoiler post up there every week for the episode so you can leave your thoughts on there. Or you can email us, as everybody that sent us emails. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can email us with your thoughts in writing, or you can send us in a voicemail, just like Greg Schwam and Steve Brown did. First up, Greg Schwam with a voicemail about this episode.
Hello, Derek, John, and Chris. This is Greg. And I just finished episode 4, The Whole World is Watching, and oh God, this is a tough one. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I don't particularly care for John Walker. I thought he was a bit of a butthead, and then recognizing his own weaknesses throughout this, getting his butt kicked by the Dora Milaje, and then like I get why he took the serum and whatnot, but just the fallout that is coming from this. Like the show is amazing. It's absolutely like every high production value spy thriller, including Winter Soldier and Civil War, and it's so good. And I think the fact that it deals with kind of those heavier issues actually is one of the things that makes it a lot better. And anyway, I really enjoyed it, although I don't necessarily know that I'd be able to watch it, especially with that ending iconic scene with the blood dripping from the shield. That was a tough watch. Not because it was bad, just because it was so heavy. All right, look forward to the podcast. Bye.
Thank you, sir, for that fantastic voicemail. The one thing we haven't talked about, the production. I can't wait to see the behind the scenes assembled of this. I'm assuming the assumption is they're going to do it. They haven't confirmed that we are getting a making of kind of episode.
Yeah, pretty likely though.
It's likely. It's pretty sure like it will be the 1 week after, maybe 2 weeks after the final episode. So in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, we'll get that. And I can't wait to see that. Mm-hmm. Just to see, again, the production, the discussion on the costumes, everything, the sound, the deep, they're going to have to do the globe-trotting location spotting kind of one discussions. And like when they filmed, like I'm assuming they actually filmed in Riga for this. But I won't know.
I think so. Yeah, I think there was a lot of travel around the world, and I know they definitely filmed in Eastern Europe for a lot of the scenes and a lot of the filming. Because remember, this is the one that got caught by COVID when they were filming, so they had to stop because the cast couldn't travel from home to the locations, whereas WandaVision could continue because at least it was in the US, so they were only under the travel restrictions within the US. This show is globetrotting, so they had multiple countries to actually navigate their individual COVID restrictions. Thanks so much, Greg, for your feedback as well. Yeah,
absolutely.
You're totally right. The final moment of this does feel really weighty and feels as powerful as the bigger moments within Civil War and Winter Soldier. I could totally see that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Greg. We also have a final voicemail from Steve Brown.
Wow. Now that was an ending to an episode. I said on panels last week that there wasn't any much blood in this, and you guys correct me that we did see blood when Selby was killed, but now we've got blood on the shield. Wow. Hey, Derek and Chris and John, it's Steve. This is for the latest episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I just finished the first watch of it, and wow, I am just blown away. A couple real quick things. I was surprised that Walker took the serum because I thought maybe he would hold on to it so they could test it and make more. And the death of Lamar, I'm assuming he's dead. I mean, we'll find out for sure probably next week. Wow. And just what that sent him on as a journey for him. And I'm kind of leaning towards, you guys might be right. Sharon Carter might be the power broker. It does seem, and also we need to find out, we haven't been shown yet who Karli is getting her information from, because she got all that information about Sam's family very quick. Okay, I can't wait to watch it again. I think I say this every time, and I can't wait to hear you guys talk about it, and I can't wait to talk about it with Mark on our podcast. All right, talk to you later.
Thanks for the feedback, Steve. Yeah, looking forward to hearing your thoughts over on Panels to Pixels as well. Yeah, that is a really shocking moment at the end, isn't it? I loved how our feedback has tended to be either people looking at the full episode or people going, I had thoughts about it, and then the end happened and everything went out of my head, you know? If you'd recorded me immediately after watching the episode the first time, I probably would have sounded exactly the same as you did there, Steve.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. I'm glad more and more people are starting to fall in line with my Sharon Carter is the power broker theory.
Oh, it's your theory now.
Yeah, it's my theory. I'm taking credit for it 100%.
I think it's the TV podcast industry's theory.
Okay, we'll take it as that.
Although I may have edited it to make it sound like it was my theory, of course.
Okay, so our theory, the royal we, the royal R, They have one more episode. So essentially, there's two ways that it will go. It will either be a surprise ending where it will be a big reveal. The power broker is Thunderbolt Ross. The
John
power broker
Bernthal
is
as the Punisher.
Yeah, it has to be that level, or it's Sharon Carter. It's and Sharon Carter is working for the power broker, or she at least knows who the power broker is, and has been like the way she was walking purposely through. It has to be more than likely either she is second lieutenant to the power broker or she is the power broker. Mm-hmm. And if she is second lieutenant, it needs to be an OMG, holy mother. This is like, can you believe that that's who the power broker is? Exactly. Because if it's just Joe Squabs from Madripoor, you're like, huh? What? Who the hell's that like?
Although equal opportunities, if Joe Squabs from Madripoor does get it, then fair dues to him.
He obviously deserved the
role. there is part of me as well. I know it's definitely not going to be the case, but just because Hawkeye went on a bit of a rampage in Southeast Asia, that, I guess put the fear of God into most of organized crime there, that for some reason I could see him as sort of coming back and kind of just going, this is mine.
Right.
I'm the power broker. And if you've got anything to say, you'll have a bow and arrow pointed at you.
I like it. Hawkeye, the upcoming series from Disney Plus. That's how it ties into Falcon the Winter
Soldier. It won't be. I know that, but it's just because he did the whole cutting a swathe through Southeast Asia with the organized crime. I guess he must have visited Madripoor at some point.
I'm sure he did. I think everybody in the Marvel Universe has to visit there at some point. There are rumors out there, but I'm not getting taken in by them after the rumors of the massive character supposed to appear in WandaVision episode 9, and turned out to be Paul Bettany, playing another version of himself. I'm not taken in by any of the rumors about what's out there, but looking forward to the next two episodes. Thanks so much once again for joining us for our coverage of Falcon and Winter Soldier. We'll be back with episode 5 next week, also covering Invincible and Pennyworth as well. So loads and loads of podcasts still coming out from us. Thanks so much for joining us this time. Talk to you again next time.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow Defenders, for joining us. It is a pleasure, as always, chatting with you. All things Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending. Bye.
I hear a lot of people saying the blues, but I'm gonna tell you what the blues is.